Parent Entrepreneur Power, conversation number 234.
Parent Entrepreneur Power.
Wait, what? It's Mama Power!
This is the podcast for parents juggling the tough choices required for success in business while putting family first. Hi, I'm Mary Catherine Johnson, and I share the ups and downs and dirty truths of profits and potty training while chatting with successful parent entrepreneurs from all walks of life. Are you powered up? Hey there, Power Parents. MKJ here, and I get to chat with someone I think you're going to be very interested in hearing from, because we are going to talk about what to do, what you really need to do when things may not be going exactly the way you think, or you think you have a plan, and how do you actually put that plan into action when all kinds of other stuff is happening. So with that in mind, welcome to the conversation, Bryan Falchuk. And he is the author of Do a Day. He's also a speaker and a life coach. Hey there, Bryan. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. I know sharing the mic with strangers is a very interesting thing we get to do every day, right?
Yes.
Lots of people are strangers. I get to interview a lot of people that are also friends, but you know, we get to meet, we get to chat for a couple of minutes, and then we dive into sometimes some pretty personal stuff. So let's just start this off with the place we always start off. What is your once upon a time story? I mean, how did you become a parent and an entrepreneur at the same time?
So I'm going to start in a weird starting place when I was 5, but I'm going to try to go quickly through my childhood. It's like so many people, I grew up with parents that were getting divorced, not an uncommon thing in the US or abroad. And that left me feeling a really strong anxiety about everything going wrong. It's like your family's coming apart. You don't know if things are going to be okay. And as a little kid, you can't do anything about that. So that had some upsides and had some downsides. The downsides were a very strong anxiety that led me to pretty severe obesity. The upside was I was a really good fixer. And that has served me incredibly well professionally, that, because I always thought things were going to go wrong, I was hyper vigilant and I would jump in and solve problems before they really blew up. So no surprise, I was a management consultant. Like that's kind of like, that's the job description. Find out what's wrong and fix it. But the downside really started to define my life, including, after getting married and having a child at, I was 30 when my son was born. 2 years later, despite having lost 100 pounds when I was in my late teens, I had put back on 50 of it. And, as a father of a 2-year-old, I was a pretty miserable person. And all of a sudden, my wife becomes gravely ill to the point that her doctors gave up on her and she wasn't expected to make it through the summer of 2011.
Oh my gosh.
And so that's my once upon a time moment where literally everything changed. And it was getting off the phone with her doctor when he basically told me he's giving up and going on vacation and take care.
Oh, that's
he actually
sweet.
he said, just take her to the ER if you need to. But she was 100 pounds, bedridden, losing 2 pounds a day, and no one knew what to do for her. And he's just like, bye-bye. So when I walked back into our bedroom after that call, and my son was standing there looking at, his mother in bed, basically dying in front of his eyes. And when he turned and looked at me, like, that was it. That was my moment. And that is where literally my entire life shifted. And, you mentioned my book, like, I didn't write it then, but that's when it was born. Mm-hmm. So it was June 30th, 2011. I was struck with something that I'd never really seen before. And that is what I've used to fuel a number of achievements that weren't even on the list of, like, cross them out because they're impossible. Like, that's how impossible they are. They wasn't even worth contemplating. Mm-hmm. I found purpose, and I know it's cheesy and overused and all that, but it's still true. Mm-hmm. It forced it upon me, and I wasn't willing to look within before. I wasn't willing to face the causes of the anxiety. I wasn't willing to face what really mattered because I was so busy trying to fix everything, mm-hmm. and frankly failing. That clarity, that purpose, I have grabbed onto really strongly, and I turned my life around. I'm a much better father. I'm a better husband. My wife would argue whether I get to use the word much or not, but I'm definitely better. but I've done so many things that were never even possible, including, coaching people through what I learned through my own journey. I wrote this book about it, and now that's, a different kind of entrepreneurship, but I'm doing that, promoting this book and speaking, and I've done a couple of TED Talks on it. And I'm an advisor to a number of startups like this. These are things that were just like, you wouldn't even consider them. And that all came from an extremely difficult moment that brought clarity for me on how we figure these things out without necessarily having to have a gun to your head, metaphorically speaking.
Right. What an amazing story. Obviously, your wife has gotten better, I assume.
She's, so her life is not in jeopardy, but she has a chronic illness that will face for, the rest of her days, but she's not dying, and that's the way we like it. So,
I'd say that's a good thing.
Yeah. But it's, it's again, like, not to keep using the phrase cheesy, but like silver linings. We wouldn't be where we are if not for that moment.
I gotta talk about that for a sec. Yeah, because I don't know anyone who's a success and who has who has grown a company or a family or just lived a life that actually is living a life, not just putting in our time. That has done that has grown a company or grown a family through only happiness.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, or never challenged.
No, businesses aren't built, lessons are not learned when everything's hunky-dory and fantastic. There are people that I connect with online all the time, and we chat and everything, and when they talk to me or they message me and they say, "Hey Mary, how you doing?" and then the next thing ... you're fan-friggin-tastic, right? Because that's usually what I say. But when things aren't going well, I say that too. I don't just try and put everything rosy. I say, well, I'm okay. And just saying I'm okay gives them the hint that, whoa, something's wrong, right? Because normally I'm like, yeah, everything's awesome. I got to wake up today. How could everything be bad? But things do get bad. And there's no way we can learn anything if nothing ever goes wrong. So, yes, you say it's cheesy, and yes, you say it's overused and all this stuff, but it's true. We are human beings, and this is how we grow.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm thinking back to a moment in business school where one of my professors made a comment about it was the whole class was on top leadership teams. And he was talking about one of the most important things to look for when you're hiring a leader is you don't want someone who has never failed. Because what if you're their first failure, and you don't know how they're going to deal with it. And, is it going to be like I was talking to someone on a show this morning, and he was saying his daughter didn't make the more whatever varsity or whatever basketball team, like the higher level basketball team. And it's her first time not making the cut. Right. She's 12. And it's like, we were both like, she's devastated, obviously. And I get that. Yeah. But it's like, thank God that didn't happen for the first time when she was like 29 and it's losing a job and not knowing how you're going to support yourself. Like you have to be tested, and you have to form that resilience to know how to move forward. And God, like that's the start of life. Yeah. Try raising money from VCs. That's like for every 40, you might have one who feigns interest. And then like, that's not even talking about investing.
Yeah, that's one of those that I'm thinking of the way you were thinking of before. That's not even on my radar. Okay, that's not something. Yeah. I mean, well, I can say I did kind of dance around with that idea recently, but then life came back and I was sucked back into all the stuff that I had to do. So it quickly flitted out my ear and haven't thought about it again since till you just brought it up. But no, it's,
Sorry.
It's so true. I mean, even our kids, none of them stand up and just walk without ever falling down.
I love that you use that example because I literally say that in my book. People, like if you're walking today, remember there was a point where you couldn't.
Yeah.
Not
just that you couldn't, but you probably bonked your head quite a few times that your parents probably thought you were brain damaged, right?
Right.
I mean,
they get back up.
Yes.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like before, it's always amazing as a father to look at that shift point where humans have the sense of responsibility because before like the restrictions of reality, because before that point, everything's possible. And a knock you down moment, they just get back up and try again. Whereas an adult would be like, oh my God, that's very dangerous. Maybe I shouldn't be trying to do this. Yeah. It's like, kid, just get up and try to walk again because they don't know any better. It's all possibility to them. And that is, it's not naivete. It's beautiful.
It's amazing. So you know what? I don't know. Again, I haven't read your book yet. I can't wait. Obviously, based on what you're talking about and the tone of this conversation. But can we speak to that then? So I think the biggest challenge of every single entrepreneur I've ever met, including myself, is to allow ourselves to do what you just described.
Yeah.
And I just sharing my own, I know the power parents have heard this before. And just to let you know, Bryan, we call ourselves power parents because if we've gotten a kid through potty training, business is really nothing. We can handle business. So we have the power already. So let's just use it. So power parents probably know my story. And that is that I went through and had a business starting in 2003. It was great success. And then 2008 hit.
Yeah.
And I went into debt and I just kept trying, kept pushing, kept trying something else. I would not look at reality. I would not change anything. So I got into about $40,000 of debt. And of course, this is a time when my house wasn't worth, luckily I didn't overspend on my house, right? I had equity and all that stuff, but we weren't going to lose anything, but I wasn't going to carry this debt because at that time, the credit cards, I had 2 credit cards and they were both at like 39% interest.
Yeah.
Right? It was crazy. I mean, I woke up with knots in my stomach and trying to face the day, figuring out what I was going to do. Finally, just liquidated all, 401ks, everything I had, and paid it all off, outsourced everything, and then looked around to what I was going to do. But that took me like 3 years of hell and torture and waking up every day like that and just digging in and saying, I just have to work harder. I just got to figure it out. It's going to be fine. Before I finally did that. And, once I did that, man, was I gun shy. Right? I was really gun shy about how could I jump back into this whole thing and really commit to possibly creating another successful business when that happened. I was really, because I had identified with that business. My identity was wrapped up in that business. I could not let it go. Until finally my accountant came to me and said, why are you still trying to get this business, this dying business? And I just said to him, if a business fails, that means I'm a failure. And he just looked at me and said, you are not your business. And I'm bawling and I give him a big, wet, sloppy kiss because he happens to also be my husband. And I said, okay, what do we do? And we liquidated and got out of it. So, but my identity was there and I was very afraid. So how can we get to that same point as a toddler, right? Who's trying to learn to walk? How can we get over those fears and do it anyway when we fall down?
So there's so much in the story that you just relayed that literally fits 100% with what Do a Day is about. So I call it an execution strategy, and there's building blocks you need to have in place. You need to, here I go again with cheesy. You need to have self-love. So that's number one, because if you don't believe that you deserve the success, if you don't believe that you're capable of achieving it, then nothing else we talk about is going to matter because you're going to self-sabotage consciously or subconsciously.
So can we stop right there and just I tell you from here going forward, just throw this cheesy and feeling like you're not speaking to the right people out the window.
Throw it out.
Yeah, throw it out. We are. I'm not going to laugh at you and go, "Oh, self-love. What's that?" No,
but you know what?
I am.
No, that's fine. But honestly, in my coaching work, there's probably like 20 or 30% of the people, as soon as I say the word self-love, you can see them be like, he's not the guy for me.
Well, then,
and I'm
guess
like,
what?
then let's call it something else.
Then you know what?
Care.
Then guess what? They're not the guy. You're not the guy for them. That's totally fine. Let them. If you believe it's self-love, shout it to the rooftops.
Well, so here's the deal. I think actually that makes them twice as in need of it. So for me, that's just like you're that much detached from how important this is.
That's
so
right.
I'm going to come at you harder.
They're probably not ready for you then.
Right. But we work through it.
Yeah. So just know that here you're fine.
It's all good. All right. And look, I'm vegan, so like I don't need the cheese. Like I'm not going to eat it anyway. So we'll set that aside. Okay. So self-love. And there's just real quick, there's a little exercise. I wrote about this for Inc. magazine, and the phrase just kind of caught on with people, I think, because it uses the word but it's not that kind of but. It's it's the opposite of and. So I call it stop the but. And at a really basic level, and we all do this, we don't take, I mean, it's kind of what you and I just talked about. We don't take compliments. We put ourselves down. We're self-deprecating. We get into fights about who has it worse, like who worked later last night and whose boss is meaner. So what I say is like when someone pays you a compliment, you go to someone's house and you're like, oh, dinner was so good. And they're like, oh, thanks, bud. I overcooked the salmon.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's just pronounced thanks.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
you don't. So as soon as that word but forms in your mind, stop.
Yes.
Because what you're doing is you're chipping away at your self-worth and your capability, and you're keeping yourself from being comfortable with that positivity. So that's a little way to start to move in the right direction. But self-love, I just said but.
I know. I get it.
Self-love is that's step one. And without that, nothing else matters. So you got to do it. That's the first piece. The second is finding your real motivation. And I think for entrepreneurs, a lot of this is actually easier than for people who aren't in that kind of mindset, because something has pushed you strongly enough to go off on your own and pursue something you really care about. You had a strong enough idea, a conviction. Like I think entrepreneurs have a leg up in figuring out what really matters to them, because it's kind of the DNA of an entrepreneur to be in connection with your purpose. And if you're not, your business probably isn't going to succeed anyway, because it's not going to resonate. So this is like, for me, that's what I found when my son turned and looked at me. Is like, what am I doing? And why am I doing this? Like the way I described how I was living before is I was an employee of my life, which is shockingly not attractive. Like who wants to be an employee of their life? It's miserable. You don't get up and go to work at your life. Like you get up and you live. Mm-hmm. So I was forced to look at the way that this anxiety was defining my life and the kind of husband I was or wasn't, and the kind of father my son desperately needed, especially if I was the only parent he had. And that for obviously, like so many of your listeners, that sense of your child's happiness and them having a good life is so utterly important. And if you realize that the way you're acting is making that less and less possible, that's a wake-up call. And the last piece coming from self-love was, wait, why do I need to live this way? Like, yeah, I need to be a better husband. I need to be a better father, but why can't I just be better for me? Mm-hmm. And that all became crystal clear to me in a way that I think I had just refused to look at before. So the second piece is that purpose, that motivation. And then you get something that you need to go for, some kind of goal. And, my old one was losing 100 pounds. Maybe it's starting a new business, maybe it's paying off your house or buying your first house or whatever it is. But these are big life kind of goals, not like, when I had 100 pounds to lose, the goal is not 5. Mm-hmm. If you're trying to save up to buy your first house, you need 100 grand for your down payment. The goal is not $10,000, because that actually doesn't achieve anything. That's a step along the way. But set the goal in that scary, uncomfortable place where you actually need your life to be. And then do a day as the way you execute. And this goes back to everything you were just saying, all those feelings you had. We live our lives really caught between two things. It's yesterday and it's tomorrow. And yesterday is all the judgment and the pain and the thoughts of how we failed or how someone did something bad to us, or maybe it's something we've lost that we long for. But we bring that all into now. So like you were talking about, it took you 3 years to get out of that trap. It took you 3 years not to be like, how can I go on and do something else because I'm going to fail at that too? Or what if I fail at that too? That's what happened before. That doesn't have to be what happens tomorrow. And by the way, you're not failing at your next endeavor right now. And that's the future idea is, I didn't start losing 100 pounds for years and years because it's 100 pounds. Like, how do you lose 100? Well, guess what? I'm not losing 100 pounds right now. I'm not, I'm an advisor to one startup who I actually joined full time for a while. With one of my main purposes was to get VC funding. And, I probably had on average 7 or 8 calls a day with VCs. The vast majority of them were no's, like complete no's. And some of them were, interested, but ended up being a no. To be able to get on the next phone call, you can't be like, oh my God, no one's ever going to fund me. And how am I supposed to get through the rest of these calls? I've got 40 of them scheduled. No, I'm not doing 40 calls right now. I'm not being rejected 40 times right now. I've got a call with someone who may love this idea and may want to join in on what we're doing. And that's what I'm going to focus on. So it's like in every moment, whether that's a day or a right now or whatever, the day is an analogy or a metaphor. You're just doing what you have to do in this moment in pursuit of your goals without any of that pain or judgment or shadow from yesterday, and none of the anxiety and anticipation of all you may still have to do or what might possibly go wrong tomorrow, because none of that's happening. And if you focus on that stuff, you'll never achieve what you need to right now.
Okay.
That's like at a basic level,
Yeah.
that's do a day.
Yeah.
Super useful for startups,
Yeah, and well, for anybody.
for anything.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
all right. So I've got to say one more thing about that because even though yes, that took me 3 years, and yes, I finally got over that, and yes, I finally started again, and yes, I've created success, and beyond the success of that first business, I've gone. Um, but you know what? Every single milestone you come up against, you're going to have those same fears. They're going to come up again. They're just going to take a different form.
Yeah.
And so no matter what, you have to keep executing through all of them.
Hmm.
Because it's not like, okay, it's not like I got here and I got over that, and yeah, I've made success and now everything's hunky dory and I'm always having self-love and everything's wonderful. That's
Yeah.
not life. That is not
No.
it. And the further we push ourselves, the more doubts, the more uncertainties, the more other crap is going to come up that we didn't know even existed in us yet, because we keep pushing ourselves further and further and further. And I'm sure you had to, it's more of a metaphor of digging deeper inside, especially when
Yeah.
you have weight. I say I get it. I totally get it. It's much more going inside. It's not pushing outside. It's definitely going further and further inside. So I'm here to tell you, Power Parents, it doesn't just stop when you reach success. It's not like you look at people like Gary Vee or anybody else that you might look up to, any of the wonderful people, Pat Flynn and John Lee Dumas, or any of these people that you've heard me talk about on the show or that you've heard on the show, or wonderful Bryan Falchuk, right? You don't look at those people and say, oh, they've made it. If I could only be like them and everything would be wonderful. No, they have to get up every day and do the same thing you do, just at a different place. So anytime anyone says, oh, I admire that, well, you can admire people, but more like I put that person on a pedestal, or I want to be like them, or anything like that. Someone's putting someone above themselves. Or if you're going to go into a scary situation with a lot of people, someone you respect, first thing I'm going to tell you is they sit down and take a crap just like you do, and they have to wipe just like you do. So let's just do it. We're all human beings. You can do anything. So I'm here to tell you, it's not going to stop. It's just going to get a little faster and a little easier. And oh my gosh, you are taking these incredibly woo-woo ideas, and I understand why some people don't relate to those, because they feel like that. Once you start talking about self-love and all those things, they kind of disconnect because they don't think that applies to them, even though it applies to every single person hearing our voice. But you take that and you put it into practical steps, it sounds like. And that's awesome. That's really incredible.
You're what you're just sharing, the phrase that I always use with people is like, the grass is always greener. Look, the grass is not green anywhere unless you garden, and you don't do it once and then it's green forever unless you put in AstroTurf. You got to keep working at it. And you're absolutely right, is everyone has stuff to work on. And I share a lot of my struggles with people, and I'm pretty honest about, when I'm having a tough time, and people are like, I can't believe that. How do you struggle? It's like, because I'm a human being. But I look at it differently. Is I recognize that it's part of adding up to greater things instead of this is the end, which is kind of how I would have looked at it before. Is this guy, like, it goes back to self-love, is if you're still standing today at all of those moments where like, oh, it's all going to fall in, like everything's ruined now. Well, add up all those moments that you said that, and somehow you're still here. Right. So it's not as bad as you thought, and you're way more capable than you thought you were if you're still standing, because obviously you've gotten through it. So give yourself a little bit of credit and recognize you just got to keep working, and it does add up.
Okay, so yes. So all right, Power Parents, I think we've already got one very specific, concrete thing you can do when things become overwhelming like this, or things aren't happening the way you think they should, like the VC thing. Or even, I know of a couple people that I've personally talked to, Johan specifically, I'm talking to you right now. There's always something that's going to be happening. And there's always difficulties in switching focus. And sometimes we do need to switch focus because maybe the thing we're on isn't quite where we need to be. That's cool. But the one thing you can take right now that Bryan just talked about is you're talking about this moment right now. The past is all the pain, the guilt, the worry, the all that stuff that you had. And the future isn't even here yet. It's going to be the 100 pounds in 6, 8, 9, 10, 12 months. Okay, whatever it's going to take. It's not today. So just look at today. Little, and we talk about this all the time, baby steps. You're not going to lose the 100 pounds today. You're going to maybe take and choose that next meal, or choose to actually work out, or choose to go for a walk with the dogs, whatever. But that's the baby step right now. It will lead, if you keep doing it, to the 100 pounds, or it will lead, if you keep doing it, to the business success, or the helping your kid through a very difficult time, or repairing something that might have been a difficulty in your marriage. All those things are baby steps. And it's just what's right in front of you. Are you going to choose to take that step that's going to lead eventually, if you keep taking those steps, to that outcome that you're looking for? So I got that right?
Yeah, definitely.
What's next? So what else can we use in this? And especially when you're talking about self-love. I mean, I meditate. Again, when someone asks me how I am, I'm like, hey, I woke up today. I'm very lucky. I actually got to do that. What else can we do to keep ourselves moving forward? And like you say, do a day.
So there's something that I'm sure people know about, like SMART goals. There's goal settings. We mentioned that, but there's a loop to it. Because one of two things will happen with a goal, especially a big goal, is either you nail it, or maybe you go beyond what you thought you could, which I find quite often people end up doing. They thought they were pushing themselves really hard, and once they get on that feeling of success, they're way more capable than they had originally estimated. Or for whatever reason you struggle, and it may just be the timing was off, or maybe something else came along, but it's this reevaluation point. So it's not a smarter goal, it's a smarter goal, and it's adding that R for reevaluation. And that's I think actually that's a way to move ahead, is like, if you've done it, well, then where do you go now? And if you haven't done it, what can you take from it? So you don't see it as a failure, because it's a growth point. It doesn't have to be like, you're not an epic failure. If I set out to lose 100 pounds and I got to 90 and just couldn't break the last 10, it's like, it's not black or white. It's not like people are going to look at me and be like, oh, wow, that guy's 10 pounds too fat. Like, no, they're just, you know what I mean? Like it's
yes.
First of all, I just look American. Like I wouldn't look obese anymore. I just look like everybody else.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's recognizing, first of all, not using the word failure, but recognizing, okay, I didn't get there. Was it a question of how I defined it? Was it a question of changes in the situation? And what can I learn and grow from that? And then in both of those situations is, what's the next step? So once I lost the weight, I don't, then it's not like, okay, I lost the second time around, it was 50 pounds. That's how much I had put back on. It wasn't like, okay, now I lost 50 pounds. I'm going to lose another 10 pounds. Like, just going to keep setting more weight loss goals. At some point, like, you can't lose any more weight. So then it's about, well, what have I achieved through this? And what's the next level? So it's not just about being thin. It's like, my body's very differently capable than it was when I started this journey. I can do things that weren't even possibilities. So I started to look into other sports, and I started to, not quite then, but a few years later, I ended up training for a marathon, which is like, the fat guy doesn't run, that's not that. So it's just like recognizing, okay, where have you gotten to and what can you do next? So I'm part of a company in my day job that is not a startup, but it's growing like 30% a year. It acts like a startup. We're still fairly young for our industry, but I joined almost 3 years ago, and the company is twice the size. My team is 3 times the size that I joined. So, that sounds pretty familiar, I'm sure, to a lot of people listening in. It's like that kind of growth. And how do you handle that? Well, we keep setting these goals every year that should scare the crap out of everybody in the company. They're so big. And we've actually outdone our performance every single year. And I promise you, we're not sandbagging. So then, but the bar keeps rising up. And so we've asked ourselves, we had a pretty aggressive goal for 2020. And what's become really clear is we'll hit it at some point in 2019. So what do you do then? And so we're actively redefining where that was so far off from where we were. We're when I joined about 400 million, and the goal was a billion by 2020, and we'll get there before 2020. That's pretty serious growth in an industry that, by the way, is shrinking 1 to 3% a year.
Yikes.
So go us. I love being a part of this
Yeah.
place. But okay, so the new goal is not 1.1. Like that's just kind of more of the same, right? So it's
Right.
it's what is a meaningful goal from here, and it's not as simple as the numbers. It's like, who are we in achieving that? So it's not just what do I weigh, it's like, what am I capable of? And it's so business focused, but the flip side is on parenting, which obviously it aligns, but like I have a lot of people who beat themselves up for, I yelled at my kid last night. I was, bad day at work and I took it out on them and that wasn't fair. And so, now our relationship's strained or what. So does that mean that's how you're going to define things for the rest of your interaction with them? Are you going to beat yourself for being a bad parent because you yelled at them? No, you may not be the best parent in the world, and that's a different question. But this one time, outburst, like that's called being human, and carrying that forward will have an expense in how you interact with them. In the same way it would with business, professional relationships, how you address the market. Did you screw something up? Well, if you're going to beat yourself up about that forever, then you're done because you will keep screwing up.
Yeah.
But if you recognize you can change, you reevaluate, you set a new goal. It's like, look, this is what I brought home with me and I acted from that. That was wrong. That doesn't mean I'm a bad person or a bad parent. It doesn't mean I'm incapable of succeeding in the market, look, using the analog there. So what can I do differently going forward and be more aware of what's going on so I don't lash out? Do I tell people when I come home, hey guys, just a warning, like I had a pretty crummy day. I'm going to go take some time. Like you said, meditation, like maybe you need to go work out for 30 minutes. Maybe you need to go meditate for 10 minutes. Maybe you need to go listen to punk rock music or like whatever your Zen is. I don't know if that's Zen, but whatever. Do what you need to do to bring yourself back to recognize that's not the situation I'm in, and it's not going to help me to interact with that kind of pain. So how do I separate from it? And that's part of that reevaluation, is just seeing a different path.
I love that. I so love that. All right. So again, I'm on the exit strategy with my kids. I have a very soon to be 17-year-old and another one that just turned 20, like just a couple weeks ago. And so, yeah, I'm on the exit strategy, and I actually have one that I've shipped off to, I live in Northern California, and he now lives in Atlanta, Georgia. Oh. And that's a really freaky thing for me to think about, that, his bedroom is very echoey right now, right? Because everything's gone. So it's really weird, but I'm on the end, okay? There's lots of you who are in the beginning. And I'm on the end, and I'm telling you right now what Bryan just said. If you yelled at your kid once, yes, evaluate where that came from, what's going on. If you're yelling at your kid and it's 3, 4, 5, 6 days in a row, something's going on that you got to evaluate, that you need to change. Right. Because it's those baby steps. It's those baby things. And I can look back, and I can definitely say, oh, yes, there were lots of mistakes I made. Yes, I was not the best. I had a lot of, again, I'm using this word crap that I had to deal with myself. But I committed to not acting in a way that would jeopardize my relationship with my sons. And yeah. I can confidently say that was an amazing commitment to have, because I have an amazing relationship. And even though my youngest and I went through some very difficult times for some very specific reasons for about 1.5 years, it was hell. I will just say it as it is. It was hell. It was awful. Every day was awful. And there were very specific reasons. I understood the reasons, and I just sat back and let it be what it was, because I didn't have control of it. And I wasn't going to fight it and be a parent who said, you either do this my way or else. And we put those kinds of situations on things, and then the or else happens, and now we've created an environment where it's very, very difficult to backpedal out of that. Yeah. And I was not going to go there. Nothing my kid can do ever except murder someone, right? Nothing they can do would make me not come to them and try and have a relationship and fix and communicate. Nothing. I don't care what they do. And so I can tell you from the other side of that, that if you keep doing those patterns, the same pattern that you feel guilty of, and you don't change it, or you don't take baby steps to try and figure something out, even if you catch yourself a little sooner, and the next time a little sooner and a little sooner, eventually you won't be doing that anymore. That's just the way we are. But if you just keep doing it and then keep feeling bad about it, you got yourself to blame. So take those baby steps, and you will, either the business, the relationships, the marriage, the parenting, your neighbors, I don't care who you're talking about, the guy at Starbucks, right? All of it, it will produce the life, ultimately add up to the life that you really want and the types of relationships and the people you have around you. But you're the only one that can take that responsibility and take baby steps to do it. So what I hear you saying is just that, where you look at those situations and see, what can I change? That's your reevaluation. So it sounds like you've done that, especially with the weight, a couple of times. Is there something specific you had to really look at and say, or have you said, I'm never going to gain this weight back again?
That's a really interesting question. No one has asked me that, including myself. It hasn't even occurred to me, because that question implies that there's a risk, and I'm not a fat guy anymore. The reasons why I was obese don't exist anymore. So it's not even really something I would contemplate. I've never thought about it like that. Yeah. So, I mentioned I'm vegan. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons why I have really enjoyed being vegan, which might sound weird to some people, but it's actually, it's been much easier than I ever thought it would. And going vegan is where Do a Day got its name, because I had put it off because I had all these excuses about, like, well, what about a business trip when everyone's like at a steak place and what I'm going to eat, or my son's birthday party and he wants me to have cake with him. And it's like, wait a second, none of those things are happening right now. Those are all tomorrows. Well, I said out loud, I was like, I can do a day. And yeah, I was like, oh, wait a second.
Hey.
I think I know what that is.
Yeah.
So I did, and it was super simple, and that was 3.5 years ago. And it hasn't been 100% of the time. It's been like 99% of the time. There's situations like my son's birthday where I make a different choice, and I understand why. But one of the coolest things that's come from it is exercise has nothing to do with what I eat. And it used to have everything to do with what I eat, because I was constantly trying not to be fat again, which is much like the, don't be an employee of your life. Like, not wanting to be the fat guy again is not a great reason to work out. Nope. And so it was very unenjoyable. It was punishment or fear-based. And now, shockingly, I love exercise. Like, I love to go out for a run. I love to go road cycling. Like, any kind of movement empowers me. And I never thought I'd be able to say that. So that's opened up a whole new area of my life that I genuinely like. I use that word love really intentionally on that. Mm-hmm. So I don't do anything out of fear of gaining weight. So when you ask me that, I don't know. I just don't care. I don't care about food. It used to be all emotional. I was trying to fill this void, the anxiety void, the sense that everything's going to go wrong. Food was the comfort. And like, look, food is not a treatment for that. So I just had to keep eating. I don't have that problem, so there's no hole that I'm filling in.
And that's exactly what I meant. Is the reason gone? And
yes.
Because that's obviously the reason wasn't gone when you gained 50 pounds back.
Well, so the first time, the 100 pounds as a teenager, for all the parents of teenage boys, I think you get this. I wanted girls to like me.
Right.
I didn't want to be the fat kid. So I lost weight for this external, superficial reason. Yeah. And then I wasn't fat anymore. And then I went to college and nobody knew me. So when I got to college, they couldn't have looked at me and been like, oh, he's fat. And literally nobody knew me there. So my whole motivation evaporated. So yeah, of course, slowly but surely, a few pounds a year like everybody else. Mm-hmm. And then, so if I lost the weight by age 18, by age 32, I was 50 pounds in again. Mm-hmm. And probably more miserable. And the only reason I didn't keep gaining weight is because I had that moment on June 30th. If that didn't happen, I'd be talking to you it'd be a different story. It's like, well, I'm 400 pounds overweight and I've still done these things.
Right. Yeah, no, I get it. Because I've struggled with that as well, and it was a recent situation, and that's why I asked it that way. Because even though we don't intend or think about gaining anything back or failing again or whatever, put whatever
Yeah.
your gig is, we don't think about it. But if those reasons are still there, and the things that we're trying to cover up or not trying to face, trying not to face, if they're still there. It's gonna happen eventually because you haven't dealt with those issues.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I get it. Very recently I had this same kind of epiphany and basically struggled with my weight all my life. We're talking maybe 30 pounds here or there, up and down, taking over say 10 years. Lose it, keep it off 5-6 years, start gaining it back again, and it really was very clear that and everything happens at the time that it needs to happen. And I would not have understood this until now, until I've reached the success that I have. And that is that for me, it was really basically hiding my power and trying to not let anyone else feel intimidated. And that was something that came from a very young age.
That's so interesting.
It's and so I would, I have to pad myself and keep some of that power in because it might intimidate someone. And I've just realized that recently. We're talking within about the last couple of months.
Oh,
and
wow.
It was so powerful. That's really the only word I can use to say
Yeah.
I don't cause anyone else I don't intimidate anyone else. That's their gig, not mine. And I don't need to stop myself. I don't need to hide or diminish or any of those words. And it was so amazing to have that. And I know I wouldn't have been able to tackle and be in the place you are where it's not an issue because it's not an issue. There's no issue without that realization.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Power Parents, if you're facing that and you have a situation where you kind of do the same thing over and over again, it may take a little bit of time. It may, you're trying to make this particular business work and you keep changing focus. You keep going, oh, well, I need to learn this first, or I need to learn that first. And we're talking 3-5 years have gone by and or you want to publish that book. You've got it written, but something always gets in your way. I say, look inside, because you don't need that next course. You don't need to learn this other thing. Knowledge is not the issue.
Yeah.
Knowledge is absolutely not the issue. There's something else going on inside. It's a mindset issue that you need to do. Would you agree, Bryan, that basically success is really 90% minimum mindset issues and only really 10% knowledge?
Yeah, if you didn't say minimum, I might argue that it could be higher than that. So I totally agree. And how did you know that I have a second book that I still haven't finished writing? And I know that's 100% on me, because I've made other decisions. They're not necessarily bad, but I also haven't been prioritizing the way perhaps I should have been.
There's always.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah,
But
it is.
I'm aware of it, and once you're aware of it, you can start to work on it. But beating myself up, that's not gonna go back in time and put the book out.
Nope. No reason. Yeah, go from here forward. I love your analogy about that. That's yesterday, it's done, and you can keep yourself in that guilt or shame or whatever negative things you wanted and keep reliving it, or you can say, what's in front of me right now and just move forward and make it a priority. There's probably a reason it's not a priority right now. You got enough going on maybe. And, that's coming up soon, hopefully, because we also don't want to take away from everybody else. So how old is your son?
He's 9. He's almost 10. If he heard me say that, he'd be like, "Daddy, I'm not just 9."
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So you're coming into fun stuff. I mean, that's like what, fourth grade?
4th grade, yeah.
Yeah. Those are
Yeah,
fun.
and he's smarter than either of us was at that age, but possibly even now. He's super, super intelligent, which is very cool to watch.
Isn't it amazing when we get to see that? I'm loving it. I have never even the difficult times I spoke about, I wouldn't trade him for anything.
Sure.
Every single situation has been really incredible to participate in. and to be a part of has just been so amazing.
Yeah.
Wow, 9. So, yep, middle school, I'll just say hang on tight.
Yeah, I'm not going to acknowledge middle school because my wife doesn't allow any talk. I mean, even 5th grade is like it's dangerous to bring up around her.
No. Yeah, well, it's coming.
Yep.
whether you
I'm
want
okay
it or
with
not,
that.
it's coming.
But so yeah, it's hard to let go of their early childhood, and I totally get that. And at the same time, every year brings its own amazing points to be so proud of and so thankful to get to witness. For her, none of this was expected. She
Right.
wasn't expected to be alive for any of it.
Yeah.
So, for me, I get what she's saying when she's like, no, I don't want my baby to grow up. I get that.
Yeah, totally.
And I love what we get to experience and cherish. And it's so cool having a relationship develop as he gets older, and
Yeah.
it's a different interaction. And he still likes to cuddle right now. So
Yes.
we're in a really cool balancing
Yes.
act between like independence and snuggly.
Yes,
I'm
that's
good
so
with that.
awesome. Oh, cherish it every moment because it will go away.
Yeah.
But that's all right. I get hugs from my sons all the time. So we definitely don't cuddle. I mean, that would be very strange with a 6'1" guy,
I
man.
get that. When he's holding you in his arms. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a little-
exactly. That's exactly it. He gives me a hug and I just get to kind of hang on. So, wow. All right. If there's somebody out there and they're going, yes, your words are resonating. Thank you, Bryan and Mary. I get it. It's amazing. I know there are things I need to tackle. But they're still kind of rocking back and forth on the fence going, I just don't know. I just don't know. What would you say to them?
I would tell them to start with the self-love thing. And there's some really basic work you can start to do. Because I think once you start to unlock that, then you start to have these feelings of like, maybe I can do something about this. Because that's part of the block. The I don't know is like, well, because you don't even see it as a possibility.
Yeah.
So every time I'm asked, there's a lot to the whole process and to do a day that you can unlock, and all of it's valuable. But it's really hard for me to get past that first step if someone's not there yet. So that's always my default answer because it's real. Like once you value yourself, then you want the rest of it.
Yeah, completely. And that will tie into everything. So
Yeah.
many people that I talk to have issues with charging money for their expertise or what they know or whatever. And it's always,
'Cause
well,
they don't value themselves.
they totally don't.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just give it away for free the first time because I've got to, I'm like, no, this person doesn't have what you have. It is worth something. Don't you dare give it away.
Well, look, as a public speaker, like that's a huge thing is when people like, what do you charge? And you have this moment of like, oh no, if I say too big of a number, they won't hire me. If I say too small of a number, they'll think that I'm a joke.
Yeah.
And invariably, I've talked to a number of speaker friends, and it's like, I like to find out what their budget is because I don't want to get into that dance.
Yeah.
And everyone I've talked to about that, they're like, yeah, when I asked their budget, it was twice what I was going to quote them.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, because you got in your head about like,
Yes.
oh no, am I really worth that? And it's like they sought you out.
Yep.
And they were ready to pay you this, and you gave them half of that because you didn't value you as much as they had valued you without even getting all of the amazingness that you're going to offer. So think about that.
Yes, absolutely. And you can't really think about that unless you start with the fact that you are worth who you are.
Yeah.
You are worth what you have. You can give. You are worth it. And someone out there is willing to exchange something that's valuable to them for what you have.
Yeah.
So go for it. That is an amazing last thought. Thank you so much, Bryan. I can't even believe this has really flown by, and we got way more personal than maybe some other interviews, but it really makes a huge difference. And so I very much thank you for helping us go there, and for helping me, and for you yourself being pretty candid with our lives. So, Bryan, how can people find out about you, get in touch with you, or take this information that we've shared with them to the next step for them, to the next level?
Yeah. So if you've got that kind of tingling interest, maybe they're not sure, or maybe they are, you can go to bryanfalchuk.com/PEPower. So it's just for your listeners. I put a bunch of things on there. There's a free exercise just to kind of get the juices going, get some of these questions together. So it's like 2 pages with some basic questions to get you thinking about yourself. there's a discount on my book. You can get a signed copy for the unsigned price. And I don't just write my name. I actually write a message to everyone to try to add to the fire that has brought you to that, to wanting to get the book. And then there's info on coaching and speaking too. But you got nothing to lose by doing the exercise, except maybe some of the baggage and some of the fear. So I encourage everyone to go check that piece out.
Yes, absolutely. So that's BryanFalchuk.com/PE power.
You got it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Power Parents, I know some of you personally, or at least I've talked to you, and I know some of you absolutely need to go to that page and get ready. I'm going there. I absolutely need to go there, so I expect to see you there, and maybe we can chat about some of the exercises that we did and how they've turned out. Thank you so much for doing that. I really, really appreciate it, and I know the audience will too.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me on.
You bet.
To get powered up for your day, just go to parentepower.com and listen to the over 200 episodes we have so far with amazing entrepreneurs just like you. It might just help you feel like a grown-up again.